Thank you, everybody. Very pleased to be here to see you all. Um, Enjoyed Professor Benjo's talk, and it's an exciting time in AI. So I have a couple of messages, um, and they will pertain to um, what Joshua is talking about. And I have a very different point of view, and I think that will become clear in the second part of my talk today. Okay, but first, welcome to the Era of Experience. And I have a couple of quotes that I think maybe a little bit indirectly, but point to my two main messages today. So, quote number one is that intelligence is from Ray Kurzweil. Intelligence is the most powerful phenomenon in the universe. So this gives us a sense of the stakes of in AI and what's going on today in AI. Intelligence is the most powerful phenomenon in the universe. And I also have a quote from Alan Turing that I think is very pertinent. And he said that what we want is a machine that can learn from experience. He said this in 1947, and it was in a talk to the London Mathematical Society. And as far as we can tell, it's the first public presentation ever on artificial intelligence. I mean, there was no field at the time. I think this is the first time someone presented on AI in public. And he made this remark that we want a machine that can learn from its experience, its own first person experience. And that's really what we're talking about today and what we're entering into today in the era of experience. So right now we are in the era of human data, what could be called the era of human data. Because all of our AIs are trained on human generated text and images from the internet, and then they're fine-tuned by human experts, given their preferences and examples of how they would make choices. And, of course, the whole thing is trained to predict the human's next words or to predict the human labels, as opposed to trying to predict or control the world. So this is what we have now. And I think we're starting to reach the limits of human data, the limits of this strategy. Most of our high quality data sources, human data sources, have already been consumed. And of course, generating genuinely new knowledge is beyond the approach of mimicking humans. To do genuinely new things, you have to interact with the world. So now we are entering the era of experience. At least this is how we see it. So first of all, AI needs a new source of data that will grow and improve as aging becomes stronger. Any static data set will be insufficient. And you can get this kind of data from experience, from your first person interaction with the world. Experience just means the data you get coming out of into your sensors and out through your effectors. And this is the normal way that people and animals learn. And I think it's just useful to look at some videos of people learning and just to remind us that we do all learn from experience. So here is an infant interacting with its world, interacting sequentially with different parts of its world, different toys, and trying to learn what you can do with those toys. And just notice it's making choices that determine its input. It will interact with the toy for a while or a piece of string for a while until it's learned all it can, and then it moves on. And as it grows and becomes more sophisticated, the amount that it can learn from each thing will change, and it will behave differently in interaction with it. So its own behavior is determining its experience, its data, and this is what we need. Or if just look at some other more or less random pictures of humans and animals learning, playing soccer, say, and achieving goals. And we just think for a moment about the data flowing into the soccer players' eyes and ears and sense organs for its body. Everything is changing. Everything is moving very rapidly. The data flow into its mind is enormous. It cannot have enough attention to pay attention to everything. And it has to make quick decisions to achieve its goals. So this is what it's life for a soccer player or for an animal flying through the forest or running away from predators or swinging a baseball bat to try to hit the ball or having a conversation, being very concerned with this high bandwidth signal processing that makes up skilled perception and action. So that's what experience is. That's what I mean when I say experience. I don't mean anything fancy and like qualia. I just mean data going in and out of the mind. So remember, this is how the data source can become variable depending upon the capabilities of the mind, just as when two game playing systems are interacting, and as they improve, the data also gets better and different. And so this is the way AlphaGo learned to make its creative move 37. This was essential to learn from the experience. The experience in this case was generated by the simulation of possible moves and consequences of those moves, which you know in game playing because you know the rules of the game. It's similar in AlphaProof. AlphaProof is the system that won a medal in the International Mathematical Olympiad. In mathematics, you can see the consequences of your operators and look many, many steps ahead, just as you can in computer Go. So just one more slide on the experiential mindset. So let's say it in words. The experiential, the way we think about things when we think about experience is that the agent exchanges signals with the world, and these are its experience. And then learning is, of course, from that experience. And a more deeper observation is that anything that the agent knows is about experience. So even if you were to give the agent some knowledge in advance, it would still have to be about experience. It's not about words. It's about what would happen if it was to do things. Knowledge is about experience, and therefore it can be learned from experience. An agent is intelligent to the extent that it can predict and control its input signals, particularly its reward. Predict and control. That's what AI is about. Intelligence is about. Experience is the focus and foundation of all intelligence. And of course, as I'm sure you've noticed or are thinking, the field of reinforcement learning is based on this mindset, and that there are agents that are first-class agents that make decisions, achieve goals, interact with the world, totally agentic. And then we can think of the timeline of where we are now. So the first era, the era of AlphaGo, the era of Atari, this is the era of simulation, where reinforcement learning agents would learn from their simulated experience and learn to get much better and have these famous examples like AlphaGo and AlphaZero that rock the world. And then we entered the era of human data with ChatGPT and the large language models, ChatGPT-3, and we are perhaps nearing the end of that era now, where all the data comes from humans. And we'll enter the era of experience, true experience interacting with the world. We see the first hints of this with AlphaProof, as I discussed. And also we see the hints of it when the large language models are now using computers, have access to APIs, and can actually take actions in the world. Okay, so this is my first point about the perspective on the future of AI. So my perspective is really that the creation of super intelligent agents and super intelligent augmented humans, these will be an unalloyed good for the world. I'm not concerned about issues of safety. I'm not concerned about loss of jobs. These are just a normal part of transitions and the development of the world. So I think this will take a while. This will take decades, and it will continue for decades after that. It's a marathon. It's not really right around the corner, but it's good for us to be getting ready for it, as it will be rocking our world for a while. Now, full intelligent agents will have to learn from experience. This is beyond our current agents, as magnificent as they are, as customizable interfaces to the world's knowledge. We have entered this new era of experience using reinforcement learning. However, I have to acknowledge that to realize its full power will require better deep learning algorithms that are capable of continual learning and meta learning. So now I'd like to shift gears and talk a little bit about the politics. And now we'll be touching on some of the issues that Professor Bengio talked about. So just we have to ask this basic question. In societies of agents, is there just one goal that everyone shares, or are there many goals? And one way of approaching this, I'm a reinforcement learning researcher. It seems very natural to think about my agents, my reinforcement learning agents. And it's obvious in reinforcement learning that each agent has its own goal. It has its own reward signal entering its mind, and it's trying to maximize that goal. And there's no reason why the reward signals entering different agents have to be the same. And if we also think about in nature, each animal has an analogous signal entering its mind. It's actually computed in the hypothalamus of their brains. And this is and also computed in its pain sensors and its pleasure sensors. So in nature, in AI and in nature, different agents have their different goals. I mean, we could talk about how they share goals, like every animal is concerned with food, but one animal's food is not the other animal's food. They're sort of symmetrical goals. They're not the same goals. And even and people too, of course, we care about our families, and we care about our food and our safety more than a common goal. So I want you to just reflect, if you can, if you will, about our economies and how they work best. I think they work best when people have different goals and different abilities. So the goals don't have to conflict, but they can be different. And differences are good. Our economies don't really rely on people having the same goal. They rely on people pursuing their individual goals and then interacting. And so I think that the message that we don't want to miss, the message or what's obvious, I think what's obvious about our societies is that we can coexist in peace, even when we all want different things. We trade and we specialize and we interact. And so anyway, whether you're ready to view things this way, let me make some definitions so I can talk about this simply. So I want to define decentralization to be this phenomenon where you have many agents, each pursuing its own goal. That would be contrasted with centralization, where you have many agents and they all are constrained to have the same goal. So, for example, bees are centralized societies. A hive of bees has many agents, but they're all pursuing the goal of the hive. And ants also. So decentralization, many agents, each pursuing its own goal, each allowed to have its own goal. And cooperation is when agents that have different goals interact to mutual benefit. Each agent achieves its own goals and furthers its own goals by the interaction. So in exchange, a win-win relationship. This is decentralization and cooperation. Now, I think that cooperation is our superpower. I think humans cooperate much more than any other animal. And cooperation is facilitated by language and by money, both things that are unique to humans. Humanity's greatest successes are our cooperations, like the economies and the markets and the governments. Those are how we cooperate. And our greatest failures are failures to cooperate, like war and theft and corruption. So this view of decentralized cooperation is an alternative view of how societies should be organized. And in my view, it's more elegant than the centralized view. that the decentralized cooperation is more robust and sustainable and flexible. It's more resistant to cheaters and outliers. Anyway, so humans are better at cooperation than any other animal, but I have to acknowledge that we're still terrible at it. We still do have wars. We still do have theft and corruption and fraud. So we have to really struggle to cooperate. Cooperation, first of all, it's not always possible. It takes at least two trustworthy agents, and there are always going to be some that are not trustworthy, those who benefit from not cooperating, the cheats and the thieves and the weapons manufacturers and the dictators. They benefit from not cooperating. Now, cooperation, if this is a great thing, but it needs institutions to facilitate it, to punish the cheaters, to punish the fraudsters and the thieves. So centralized authorities can help cooperation, the institutions that are needed to facilitate it. But those centralized authorities can also poison cooperation in the long run when the authorities become authoritarian or sclerotic. And so this contrast is between centralized control and decentralized cooperation. I think the tension between these two is the central political issue of our time. And so I think you'll see that if you just look at these parallels between the calls for control of AI and the calls for control of people. So think of AI for now. There are many calls, and here I want you to think of Professor Bengio's talk, which is explicitly a call for controlling the goals of AI, or controlling even their ability to have goals. There are calls for pausing or stopping AI research, slowing it down. There are calls for limiting the power that can be used to make AIs. And there are calls for ensuring the safety of AI, and just requiring disclosures. So the parallel then is with the control of people. As you know, in big political issues in our time is, can speech be free? Can people be allowed to hear things of other people? Can we have free trade, or must it be controlled? How can we control the employment? How do we control the financial or the capital controls? Do we have tariffs and economic sanctions on one country or another? These arguments, I think, are eerily similar between the calls for control of AI and the calls for control of people. I think it's basically a society issue, how we're going to deal with people having multiple goals. Are we going to go decentralized? Are we going to move towards centralized control? So the calls for centralized control are very similar. They're all based on fear. They're all based about us versus them, whether it's us Americans versus them, the Russians, or if you're in China, as you guys all are, you're us as China and them as the US. In the US, it's the other way around. We are all, they're all the centralized controls. They demonize the other. They claim the other can't be trusted. I think it's much more complicated than that, or more nuanced than that. We all, in every society, there's some who can't be trusted, and there's the majority that normally can be trusted. So, just to summarize, I think all human flourishing and also AI flourishing comes from decentralized cooperation. Humans are great at cooperation, but they're also terrible at it. Cooperation not always possible, but it's the source of all that's good in the world, and we must look for and support cooperation and seek to institutionalize it. Now, this is where I have to call on you to use your own experience with your world. I want you to look with your own open eyes. And I think if you do, it's easy for you to see who is calling for mistrust, and who is calling for non-cooperation, and who is calling for centralized control. And I think we should resist those calls. And finally, I just think this is a useful lens with which to view all calls for human and AI interaction. Now, thank you very much for your attention.